Magnus, you were born and grew up in Norway, a nation without the chess pedigree of the US, Russia, former USSR, or other sort of countries that are known for chess, perhaps per se. Do you think that it made it much more difficult to get into the world of professional chess?
I wouldn't necessarily say so, because in a sense, I was very lucky since the place I grew up, it was very close to sort of the best chess environment we had in Norway, and I'm not so sure if I'm the personality worked who would have worked very well under, let's say, a Soviet type regime, since I'm somebody who's always been sort of driven more by inner motivation rather than anybody pushing me. And Norway is a typical country in that sense, in that you're not particularly pushed to do anything. It's more like you do what you want, and that doesn't necessarily promote excellence overall, but it does give a decent environment for those who just have a very strong inner motivation, because they're being told that you can do whatever you want.
Yeah, you mentioned inner motivation. How much of a role do you think chance has to play? Because you frequently said that at least at a young age, you almost accidentally stumbled into playing chess due to being competitive with your sisters and your dad being only an amateur player at the time. How much do you think chance has to play in that as well?
I think it's a massive role. I mean, first of all, my father is a very keen chess player at a reasonable level. Without him, I don't think I would have gotten into chess in the same way. Then we lived abroad in Belgium for a year. We were supposed to stay there for 3. If we had stayed there for 3, I wouldn't have started playing chess probably, because it's a thing I only started to do once we got back to Norway. Also, Belgium didn't have much of an infrastructure for chess. I think it's just like overall in life, like obviously being born at all is it's a massive coincidence, and everything that happens after that. I think it's sometimes being underestimated how much is just pure chance. Yeah.
Would you say then, as a sort of final question on the sort of early stages aspect of your life, would you say that your early experiences of the game differ massively then from other grandmasters? Is there generally a standard route into professional chess, if at all?
I think most of the best chess players in the world are relative prodigies when it comes to chess. Probably also other things. I wouldn't say that I'm somebody who just caught it immediately. It took some time, but I'm somebody who probably keeps learning when others stop, and that's something that I think sets a lot of the best players apart from others, because chess isn't really a game that's suited to somebody who's used to like being good at school, catching things immediately. It takes a little bit more time.
Mm-hmm. Let's talk a bit about your tournaments then. What tournament win would you say you're most proud of?
Oh, there's no question. That's the Norwegian under-11 championship in 2000, when I was 9. That was the first time I sort of established myself as one of the best kids in the country. Before that, I'd sort of been somebody who was improving, but was always a bit of an underdog, and that was the time when I realized that I can actually be very good at this. So that's for me, that's the one that I always come back to. Obviously, I'm proud of many of my successes, but nowadays I usually spend more time being bothered by the games that I lose, regardless of whether I win the tournaments or not. So it's we have to go way back.
Of course. You say that's a sort of bit of a turning point for you. Would you say that there are any other tournaments that have been really big turning points in your chess career?
I would say there was a tournament in it was halfway in Mexico and halfway in Spain, Morelia and Linares in 2007. Was one of my first tournaments with all the or most of the best players in the world. I just 1 month before that I got beaten pretty bad at a tournament in the Netherlands, and a lot of people were wondering. I just turned 16. They were wondering if I was ready at all. I didn't know if I was ready, but yeah, I got second place in that tournament finally. But most of all, it was just the feeling of actually beating some of the best players in the world, and it sort of made me realize that this is what I need to do. I up to that point in the world, up to that point in time, I'd always strive to play against better and better opponents, and I didn't care that much whether I was winning all my tournaments. I just wanted to improve. I just wanted to learn. And that's after that I realized that I was getting ready. I wasn't ready yet, but I was getting there to beating the best players in the world, and that was really big for me.
Could you give us a bit of an insight into the pressures and mental state that you face just before a huge match, like a world championship or a game with Max at the start of this talk?
I mean, what can I say? Most of the pressure I have, obviously, I sort of put on myself. I'm usually pretty hard on myself. I always want to be better. I always want to learn. But I think the World Championships differ a lot from others, because in other tournaments, I really want to do well. I want to show my best. I want to learn all of these things. But when it comes to the World Championship, I feel like I have to win, because I cannot imagine not winning, and I'm sure you can imagine what kind of pressure that puts on yourself, and that's why those particular tournaments are a bit of a mixed blessing for me, and they are in a sense the most rewarding, but they're not the ones that I enjoy the most, because it sort of takes away, at least to me, it takes away from the joy I've always had playing the game.
What advice would you give for players at beginner, intermediate, and advanced levels of playing, and how would that advice differ depending on somebody's level?
The thing is, it's very, very difficult to me. Very, very difficult for me. I mean, the best advice I could probably give is not listen to me, because I'm not a professional in that sense. I'm not a chess coach, and all the experiences that I have are extremely subjective and massively biased. So any advice I give based on what's worked for me would not necessarily work for somebody else, because my own experience was most of all starting out fairly young. I loved it. I spent a lot of time on it, not because somebody wanted me to, but because I wanted it, because I loved the game. and I would not do a lot of organized training. I would just play some games on the internet. We had some chess books, so I would sit and analyze with them, read the books, then analyze some of the positions on the board. I would do most of these things on my own, and I would think about chess all the time because I loved it. And that wouldn't necessarily work for somebody else. I can just tell you about my own experiences. So from my experience, what works is if you're interested enough, you can just wing it, and then obviously you need some people to guide you, especially if you feel like you're stuck at a certain level. But like, my general advice is just do what you love and see where it takes you. And if you want serious coaching, ask somebody else, because I don't know. I'm just somebody who plays their game very, very well. I'm not. I don't claim to be anything more.
Awesome. I'll try and keep my questions briefer and only ask a few more, because there are a lot of audience questions, which is very exciting. One of the last questions I'll ask is a bit about online chess. Across your career, the rise of computers has had a huge impact on the world of chess. Software like Snapfish now enables us to compute the best possible move in every scenario to a high degree of accuracy. How has the change this has caused been noticeable to you in particular whilst playing, or throughout your journey in chess?
Well, chess engines have certainly made it easier to learn, because you can get sort of instant feedback on your games without consulting a coach, as you had to do before. It has certainly also enhanced opening theory massively, because you can just sit and analyze with computers and find new possibilities that way. And it's made it also easier to sort of more accessible to watch, because you can see more or less a live score, in the sense, based on what the engines tell you. So those are, I would say, huge positives. In terms of negatives, I think it's removed some of the mysticism about chess. I think before my time, chess players were considered like half, almost magicians, in a sense. They could create something that nobody could understand. And now it's just Stockfish or Leela Zero or whatever. They just spit out the same moves in a matter of seconds. So I feel like that's a bit of a shame. But overall, obviously, chess computers have made the game a lot more accessible around the world, and it's been a huge net positive.
Mm-hmm. Where do you see that sort of particular change in like 10 years time in particular?
I think classical chess, in classical chess, it's going to get just more and more difficult to win games at the top level, since the game is just getting more and more analyzed, and like the oasis of openings that you can find, they're getting fewer, where like lines that are hard to analyze or haven't been analyzed that much. So I think we will eventually get more and more into faster time controls, like Blitz or Rapid. That's already happening online, that most people play Blitz or Rapid in casual games, and I think that will happen more and more in tournaments. and probably also some shift towards variants of chess, like chess 960, where the pieces on the back rank are randomly distributed, and also there are other variants like no castling chess or no stalemate chess that are very interesting. But I think eventually we will get more creative about those things, because yeah, it's at the moment it's really difficult in classical chess, and it's just the way science works.
Mm-hmm. Of course. As a penultimate question from me, which historical player would you most like to play in their prime?
Oh, there are so many.
Well, give us a few.
Yeah, I'll give you a few. Kasparov, obviously, I played Kasparov after his prime, but not in a very competitive setting. And I mean, that's the most obvious answer, since I consider him to be the best player of all time. Mm-hmm. And there are others like, frankly, I found Fischer's style a little bit maybe on the dull side. So I'm not so sure about him, even though I still think he's one of the very, very best players of all time. Maybe somebody like Michael Tal, who was world champion in 1960 and who played a brand of chess that was pretty outrageous at the time, and with a lot of both dynamic and speculative sacrifices. And yeah, I would have loved to try and refute them.
Of course. As a last question from me before I move on to the audience questions, I'm going to ask you a bit about visualization when it comes to boards. Do you find it easier to visualize the board in online chess or sort of real life chess? But in addition to that, do you visualize real life chess from a bird's eye perspective, or from your viewing angle? Is it sort of a Queen's Gambit type view that you sort of look up at the ceiling in?
I would say if I do look up or away, that is what people do when they try and remember something. So that's all. Usually, I would say that I find it somewhat easier to visualize the board when I'm playing at a physical board rather than online, and I think that is because I actually I started out playing on a physical board. Like I feel like I'm in the sort of hybrid generation there. I have one foot in the old world and one foot in the more modern world, but I would say that I'm a little bit more comfortable visualizing it on a physical board. I feel like I have a better understanding of the geometry of the game when I do that. Apart from that, yeah, I would say that I don't think there's a bird's eye view or anything. It's just, yeah, I have the board in my head, and in that sense, the Queen's Gambit thing is a little bit exaggerated, I think.
That's very fair enough. Moving on to the audience questions. The first audience question is from Felix Westcott at St. Peter's College. Felix asks, what does the average training session look like for you? How much do you train per day or week?
So I would say, again, don't take any advice from me, because my average training session, it depends. What if I'm at a training camp, which I would be a lot before World Championships, then it would be very easy. You wake up, you have breakfast, 2 hours of chess, approximately 1.5 hours of physical training, then lunch, and then 4 more hours of chess training. dinner and maybe 1 or 2 hours of chess training again before you go to sleep. When I'm at home, I think about the game all the time, but there isn't so much organized chess training. I talk with my coach, but apart from that, I really can't force myself to just sit down and study for no reason.
That's fair enough. The next audience question comes from Melissa Hinckley, who's a former librarian, vice president of the union from Keble College. Melissa asks, how did it feel to win the Newen Chess Classic against Nakamura recently?
It felt very good to win that tournament. And I talked about earlier how these days, even when I win a tournament, or a game, I may be a little bit disappointed because I feel like I didn't play my very best. But in this particular case, I hadn't won a tournament for a few months, so it felt very good to win one again. But then my thoughts turned very quickly again to how can I improve my game, because I didn't feel like I could show my best, but I did take at least a few minutes to enjoy.
Of course. The next question comes from Adam Mee from St. Cat's College. Adam asks, you said in an interview as a child that your goal was to become a Grandmaster, and the interviewer questioned how realistic that was. Do you have any goals at the moment which some might think are unrealistic?
Truth be told, I don't actually remember saying that. It could be. The way that I remember it, I didn't have too many concrete goals. I just wanted to learn. And right now, I don't know, like a lot of people have goals for me in terms of what rating I should achieve or how many world championships I should win and so on. I don't know. I want to win the next one. I want to play well in the next game. That's what drives me more than any of those things. Like, okay, goals. I did have a brief thought during my 125 game unbeaten streak. Like, I did briefly think maybe I don't have to lose a classical chess game again. And then after I lost one, then I've now lost, I think, 3 more in about 30 games. So no, that's not realistic.
The next question comes from Anya at St. Cross College. Anya asks, do you think chess should be included in the school curriculum?
I think there are a lot you can learn from chess, and I think at least for some people it can help a lot in your education. For me, maybe the thing it helped the most with is to make quick decisions. Because that's something I've learned, that there are a lot of people who are very analytical, but they can't seem to make decisions without having sort of perfect information. And in chess, even though that is technically a game of perfect information, a lot of the decisions you make aren't 100% informed. They're based on educated guesses, and in that's certainly what I learned from chess, to make try and make just educated guesses based on quick thinking. So I think in general there are a lot of positives that you can take from chess. Whether you should replace other subjects with that, I don't know. I don't think it would be the worst thing, but I'm not one of those who is 100% in on chess should be a part of the curriculum. No.
To move on, we've got about, I think, 14 minutes left, and we have a lot of audience questions.
Okay, I'll try and be faster then.
The next question comes from Josh Greensmith at St Hilda's College. Josh asks, what are your opinions on chess 960 or Fischer Random? A few years ago, it seemed it would become a major format for super GMs to play at a high level, but has faded away from popularity.
So what I think happened is I played 2 world championships in chess 960. The first, an unofficial one, I won, and the second one was an official world championship, and I was second. And basically, people, I think, decided that it would be bad publicity for chess if I wasn't world champion in everything. So that's why we stopped. Seriously though, I would love to see more chess 960 Fischer Random in a classical format. So far it's mainly been sort of a slow rapid style, but I do feel like you need more time for Fischer Random. So that's what I would love to see, classical format Fischer Random, and that's something that I've talked about a lot actually in the last couple of years, and yeah, that's what I would love to see.
Perfect. The next question is from Charlie Reeder at St Hilda's College. Charlie asks, what is your favorite chess opening?
I think my favorite chess opening is and has always been the Rue Lopez, because it can lead to open games or more closed games. It can lead to a lot of varied pawn structures and different strategic themes. And in terms of learning, I think it's one of the best openings to play, because you will get everything from that particular opening.
Clifford Marcus from Keble College says, you retained your title against Caruana by 12 draws and a quick play finish. How good do you think that is for popularizing chess? Would it not be better just to have a yearly tournament to decide the world champion instead of having this challenge system?
Well, you're preaching to the choir. That's what I've been advocating for a long time.
Very quickly, as a follow-up on that, how best do you think, or how would that be achieved? Like, how likely is that sort of to be achieved? To reframe that question.
So I think the main issue that we have now is that the champion has such a huge advantage and a privilege from winning the previous match, and I just don't think that's the way it should be. And believe me, that's what I was saying before I became world champion, and it's what I've been saying since. I wrote an open letter about that in 2014 after I'd won my first world championship, and I was very vocal about my opinion that we should have yearly world championship matches, and they should be in a knockout format, because that is the only format that is that's the closest you can come to something that's completely fair.
Yeah.
And what I got in return is basically we want the system as it is. And what I've been saying since is, well, if you want that stupid system, I'm going to take the world championship title, I'm going to sit on it, and I'm not going to give it back.
Awesome. The next question comes from Ewan Richardson from St. Cross College. Ewan asks, how do you come back from an emotional loss in a tournament or match? Does it make you play even better?
I have a reputation of coming back from losses, and very often winning the very next game, often in good style. I do think it's somewhat exaggerated, though. I think it's just from that I win a lot of games in general, and sometimes there's just happen to come after losses. What I would say is that I'm certainly not somebody who takes very well to losing, and it does. So when you talk about emotional losses, for me, every loss is emotional, and I just try and channel that anger into something positive, but it isn't always easy. What can I say?
Of course. The next question comes from Jack Hughes, Owen Marshall, and Zara Siddiqui from Exeter and Jesus College. They say, you speak a lot about your coach. How does one go about coaching the best player in the world in the first place? Obviously, you said before that it's very tailored and very specific, but could you give us an insight into that?
It's a lot about new opening ideas. That's the most obvious way to get results, because a lot of other things you can try and get a little bit better at, and my coach certainly can see things in my game that I can improve, and that my style evolves over time. For instance, I would say that sort of more dynamic parts of my game became a lot better in the last couple of years, but then I've probably lost a little bit in terms of what I used to do before that, which was more of an accumulation of small advantages that I could eventually turn into something. So certainly my coach feels those things very keenly and has suggestions for how I can try and be more balanced.
We've got about 6 minutes left, so I'll try and get through as many more questions from the audience as I can. The next question comes from Thomas Hackman from Green Templeton College. Thomas asks, could you tell us a bit more about, or some about why you played the legendary double Bong Cloud versus Hikaru during the Magnus Carlsen Invitational, and what you thought of the aftermath?
Why I did it? That's very easy. I did it for the memes. In terms of the aftermath, I think that was pretty predictable. The relatively newer fans liked it. Some of the older didn't. I would say that in general, I'm somebody who has a lot of fighting spirit, so I play every game, and I can get the argument about respecting the game and so on. But it was one game that was we were both qualified for the knockouts. Then it was the last game, the preliminaries, and for mostly I would say. You don't have to hate fun. You can embrace it sometimes.
The next question is from Will Kirkpatrick. Will asks whether or not you'll start streaming more like Hikaru does, or do you think you'd lose focus on the tournaments? And then Will also asks, is it true that Ludwig is your best friend?
I'll address the second point first. Yes, of course, it's my best friend. Why would I lie about that? In answering the first question, I have streamed a little bit more recently. I think doing that 7-8 hours, like a lot of people do, I do respect the effort that they put in. Personally, I would consider it a massive waste of time, since there are a lot of other things you can do as well. But I do think I will stream some more, since I enjoy it very much, and I like to give people some decent free content. And I don't think it hurts my chest, no.
George Widdicombe from Kellogg College asks, how do you explain your performance in fantasy football and how do you approach your game?
I watch a lot of football. I read some stats and I have some luck. That's all.
Fantastic. Next question is from Ben Gade at St Hilda's College, alongside Janice Tang as well. They ask, how do you feel about your WC match with Nepo later this year? Historically, he's been playing well against you. Is that a concern?
I wouldn't say it's a concern. He played very, very well now in the candidates, and that concerns me more than our historical record. He's somebody who I've known for, I think, 19 years. We played a lot of training games as well as official games in shorter time controls, and in those I've generally been beating him fairly handily. So I think the whole official record there is being a bit overblown. But he has made a lot of improvements recently in classical, so he's more than worthy and very, very interesting opponent.
Michael from University College asks, what are your thoughts about Daniil Dubov?
Dubov is, I think, I think he's in a way the direct successor to his mentor Alexander Morozevich, who was one of the best chess players in the world. I think he was ranked #1 for a week or something at some point, but he was not somebody who could consistently win at the highest level, but somebody who inspired a lot of people and played some of the best games and best tournaments. So I imagine Daniil will have a similar career, that his peaks will be very, very high, but I don't think he'll ever be consistent enough to be the best in the world.
Fantastic. I'll ask about 2 or 3 more questions because we've got about a minute to go now before we start wrapping up. Simon Norris from Oriel College says, considering the year that chess has had, have you felt any direct impact from its explosion in popularity, or has it been a change that you've seen separate from the professional circuit?
Certainly, it's not been a good year for the world, obviously, but this sort of switch to more online chess and the pandemic, which means that people have a lot more time. It's been great for chess. Whether I felt it, I don't know. My social media has increased a lot of volume without me particularly trying to do that. Apart from that, I don't know. I've not I haven't felt it. But I love the fact that chess is doing well, obviously.
Fantastic. As a last question from Theodore Sergi from Keble College, the current senior access officer, Theo asks, have you watched the Queen's Gambit? What are your thoughts of it? And do you think it's inspired more chess, broadly speaking?
I certainly think Queen's Gambit was part of the reason why chess became more popular the last year. I watched it and I very much enjoyed it. And I think that did the chess very well. And obviously that was part of the joy for me, seeing if I could recognize the positions, and if I couldn't, then trying to figure out what was going to happen. So that was very, very enjoyable.
Fantastic. Just before we finish, we partnered, as you know, Magnus, with the University Chess Club to organize the competition that we raise money for charity in, which is why Max got to play you. It was their 152nd birthday last week, and they've asked for a shout out. So would it be possible for you to say shout out and belated 152nd birthday to the Oxford University Chess Club?
Yes, a happy birthday to the Oxford University Chess Club. May there be 150 more.
Thank you so much. Thanks a lot for joining us today, Magnus, and thank you to the audience for coming. All the best.
Thank you.